Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Earlier we had an opportunity to talk to Christian counselor Cinda Christi, at least Paulina did, and they talk about transitions. Are you going through a lot of transitions? Well, as you know, they can be stressful. Change can be pretty stressful. So how do you navigate through change in such a way that it's not so stressful? Well, let's join Cinda and Paulina as they talk about that.
Well, I'm very happy today to have back with us in the studio our friend, Cinda Christi. She's the Christian, hold on, let me get this right, licensed Christian counselor here in the area. And today we are talking about change. And before we get into some questions, I want to ask you about the change that you had this year. You've moved.
I have moved locations. I was with an agency, and now I am on Crater Lake Avenue. Have an office there with two other folks, Becky Gather-Cole, who is a licensed therapist, and also Nick Serrani, who's a life coach. And so we have a great location and a beautiful office.
And what's the address?
331 Crater Lake.
Okay. And what's the best way to get hold of you guys? Just walk in or phone?
Give a call. My number is 541-301-7391. I'm also in the phone book. So
perfect.
Or they can call here at theDove. The gals at the front have the number. Thank you. It's really been exciting. It's been a big change.
Well, I know that this is not the only change you've had in the last year or years. So let's start with you.
Okay.
How has the change affected you in the last, say, 10 years?
I've had a lot of changes. When I was thinking about this, I just kind of wrote down, like, over the last 10 years. So I went through a divorce. I had my parents who lived here, and my sister was here. They moved away. My 3 kids grew up, went to college, and got launched. I had been working for 16 years in the public schools. I got laid off. That was really a shock in 2008, devastated me, right when my daughter was getting ready to go to college. What else? My father passed away. I joined a new counseling agency, and then this year moved to a new business and also sold the family home, all in this last year.
A new business home and new home.
And yeah, sold the family home, which was a huge ordeal, and moved to a condo. So yeah, I think I'm still you
look great.
Thank you. It's it's a cover up, really.
Well, it doesn't look like it affected you at all.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was really stressful, and it's been pretty exhausting. Change is hard. I'm not one of the people that can just let's roll with it. I'm a steady Betty kind of person. So
how do you deal with it then?
Well, that's a good question. So I put it out on Facebook just for fun to see what people would say, and I got all kinds of answers. I think this is an area that a lot of people struggle with, and people who have to deal with all kinds of change is not easy. So some of their answers were to memorize scripture that is comforting, like Psalms 91. He will shelter you under his wings. To surrender all, that came up several times, of just accepting it. Okay, God, this is where we're going. I surrender to you. Trust in the Lord's sovereignty, letting God take the lead, letting him have the wheel, which is really hard at times. Wrapping yourself with close friends, which I know for myself has been really helpful. Somebody said drink red wine, eat chocolate, drink hot tea, stay with your routines that help you stay grounded, and remind yourself that God is still with you, no matter what you go through. So those are just some of the comments. There were so many comments.
So those are the ones you got on Facebook?
Those were the ones I got on Facebook.
Those are the ones that were public?
Those were public.
You see people in the private setting every day, and they come to you, and probably a lot of them do face changes. What kind of changes do you usually talk to people about?
A lot of different things. I think in this last year I've had a lot of people with job changes, either a new boss, or they've been laid off, or change of jobs, and it can be really stressful for people, and with that sometimes there may be a raise, but there also may be a decrease in pay, so financial changes are really hard on people. Developmental changes with your kids, so as they're growing up, teen years, maybe your teen was always compliant, and now all of a sudden they're yelling and arguing and they're not just the same docile child they used to be. And so dealing with a change with your teen.
So why do they come to you? What do they want?
I think that people want some kind of relief from the stress and the pain of whatever they're going through, and just maybe some coping tools or skills of how to get through it and to adapt to the change, because change is not easy for everyone.
So, not to say that your job is not important, but what you do with these people in those sessions, can that be learned by a family member? Can the person deal with it without having to go to a counselor?
Absolutely. I think it just depends on the level of change. I think that everyone is different, and certain people thrive on change and they love it. I mean, I've talked to several people who said they're always looking for something new, like every 2 years, let's do something new, or move somewhere else, or get a new job, or move to a new location. Not everyone is like that. People who tend to be planners, who kind of plan their life out, they really struggle with change. How about you? How have you handled change? You've had a lot of change this year.
I have. Last year, this year, moving, new job, a lot of things. Not new job. Why am I saying new job?
Husband.
New marriage. It's not a job. It's a hobby.
Well, it's kind of a job, isn't it?
No,
it's a change.
It's a change.
And even though a good change can be challenging.
And see, you don't want to use the word stress, because it's not really stressful, and yet it does add some kind of I don't know if it's pressure or whatever it is, but you do adjust.
You have to adapt.
Yeah, but I love change.
Okay.
Like I was telling you before we started, I'm looking for things to, like I'm excited that when are we going to move next? When are we going to go somewhere? Okay. That's how I love that.
So you kind of thrive on that.
Yeah, I love that.
So how do you do with unexpected change?
Well, let's see. Some of the things you've mentioned. God, obviously,
right.
First thing.
Right.
And a lot of the thing, what I've realized, that it's not the feeling. I used to look for the feeling, I want to feel good.
Right.
And you'd stand there and you pray until you feel good, but I just don't think that's the way to go anymore. You pray even if you don't feel good.
That's right.
And you trust God even if it doesn't feel like you're having this rushed energy through your body. You just do it.
Right, and you follow him no matter what changes come your way. I mean, it's kind of like life is like a train. We're on this track, but you know what? There's bumps, there's curves, there's different stops, there's different destinations, and new people that get on the train. I mean, new things that happen in life, and it's not just straight, smooth path. Yeah, it just isn't.
And the peace, what I was gonna say is that when things, usually the unexpected changes, well, at least the way I've had it, is the bad ones. Someone dies, someone leaves, the job loss, whatever. And that's the time when we really want that peace that God promised.
Right.
And it's sometimes so hard to see, a day ahead, a month ahead. And what I've discovered in my experience dealing with those kind of changes, that you just have to trust God. It's as plain as it gets. You're not going to feel that peace right away, but it will be there.
It will be there, and but it doesn't happen overnight, just like you said. And I know several people have told me they just find a scripture and they just claim it and they say it over and over and over. And I think of the one, he will keep in perfect peace he who trusts in thee, or keeps your mind fixed on him. And so just, Jesus, I know you're with me. Jesus, I know you're going to get me through this. God, I know I'm not alone. Just saying those verses and saying, reminding yourself.
Well, we do that. And as Christians, we do that. And yet, you probably have Christians who come to your office. So what are we doing wrong then?
Sometimes I think people just need extra support, or there are some things that make it especially difficult. If you have, just gone through a divorce, or I have a lot of teens who've just gone through relationship breakups, they need to process and really talk about the events and the things that happened, and to kind of go through the things that happened and how they got there, and what caused the breakup, and what were their mistakes, and how they could have done things differently. We're not robots. We're not just automatic, it's just a time to reevaluate and kind of look at your life.
So what you're saying, that when change happens, you need that time to evaluate, to discuss, to kind of get it all together in your head.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's important to be gentle with yourself, because all of a sudden your body's kind of gone through something too. If it's been a really severe kind of change where you got fired, I mean, you know, I remember when I got laid off, just kind of like shaking, because it was so unexpected. I had no idea. My whole body kind of went into a shock. And so that wasn't going to be a quick, say a scripture, I'm going to feel better tomorrow. No.
And there are people who are like yourself, who don't like change, who get a little more anxious when it happens. And that's another things that I've realized in working here. You meet so many people and you realize that people are different.
Very different.
And it's normal, right, to be anxious when the change comes?
I think so, depending on who you are. And I think some people handle it much better than others. And I think it just depends on who you are and your personality and maybe how you grew up. I grew up in the same home for 18 years with, you know, my neighborhood and set group of friends. So I really liked that, you know, comfort and security. And so 10 years of all this change for me has not been easy. But you know, if I look back, and I would just say, gosh, look at the great changes too. Even though there were hard things through it, I grew as a person, I matured, I became stronger in the Lord. Those things happen through change.
And how influential were your friends and your family in making you, you know, helping you go through these changes?
Right there. I don't believe, for me, I think one of the things people do that is very damaging to them is to isolate. So you go through a hard time and you don't reach out, don't call a friend, or you stop going to church. I've heard a lot of people get depressed about things in their life, so they stop going to church, stop going to Bible study. They stop the things that actually would bring them support.
Why do they stop?
I think out of depression, you know, just feeling really down, and so isolating, withdrawing. I know when my mother lost my dad, and she was in her 80s, and, you know, 66 years of marriage. So that's going to be a big change. I remember asking her, how did you get through that? And she said she never stopped going to church. She did not miss one Sunday or one women's Bible study in her 80s. And that's one of the things that helped her. She kept her routines.
Well, I want to talk about that kind of change after the break. And also, when people come to your help, sometimes they do wrong things that actually hurts the process.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about this after we have a little break here, so stay tuned.
Great.
We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Paulina and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us. Well, we're back. Today we're talking to our friend Cinda Christi, a licensed Christian counselor here in Medford. And let me give you your address again. The new location for Cinda is 331 Crater Lake Avenue, and phone number 541-301-7391.
Right? Perfect.
Okay. So we're talking about change, and one thing I mentioned before we went to break is people helping you when you go through change.
Right.
Sometimes certain things they say may hurt the process of going through the change, and sometimes it makes you want to be isolated when certain people say certain things. Can you talk about that a little? How the best way to help someone
who's going through change? Well, I do know when I was going through my divorce, I had a family member say, after, you know, it wasn't really only 6 months, after a 20-year marriage, said, aren't you over him yet? Or something like, you know, aren't you, you know, done with that? It's like, no, I'm still healing. It takes time, and I think sometimes Christians, anybody, people can be flippant and not have any understanding for the change that someone's going through, especially if it's a hard thing, to just kind of expect them to just move on and, you know, get out there and, you know, live their life and pretend nothing happened. Well, that doesn't work.
So I guess be more considerate.
Be more considerate and compassionate. You know, another situation where a person saw a traumatic event in her neighborhood that was very, very stressful. And people came up to her at church and then just started talking about their own stories, things that had happened to them, events that were kind of traumatic just like that, but would never really listened to her story. So I think another piece would just to be listening and being compassionate and not just talking about yourself.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's kind of a cover-up because you know, you feel uncomfortable when somebody's crying in front of you. You really don't know what to do.
It's true. People do not know what to do. And I remember when I got laid off, and some of my coworkers that had not been laid off avoided me. And it was so strange. It was like, why aren't they coming around to talk to me? And later I addressed it with someone and they just said, you know, I didn't know what to say. I felt so bad that you lost your job and I didn't. So I just avoided you. And yeah, that was really comforting.
Yes.
You know, people just don't know what to do, I think, a lot of times. But a lot of times people just need someone to be there with them. You know, just hang out with them and be a friend. And you don't have to have the answers and you don't have to fix it. But just kind of walk with them through the journey, I think, is a big part of it.
So be present, listen, be compassionate, considerate.
Right.
I know yes, it drives me nuts sometimes when you're in a room of people and there are some people who've, say, gone through a loss of someone. Well, let's use a different example. Who's divorced?
Right.
And they're going through a difficult time. And then someone says, oh, and I've been married for 50 years. Well, that's great.
Right.
But there's somebody here who's going through something really difficult in their life. And you just said it in their face.
Right.
That's
Yeah, it was a slam. It's like it comes across as a slam, even though that person may not intend to.
They didn't mean it.
They just don't realize. They have no idea. You know, they really don't have any idea. And so often I get the people that come in who have been wounded by church people or friends who were not there for them, but maybe they felt judged and criticized. And so I think that's one thing, you know, we can all work on is working on, you know, not judging other people, but to support them, encourage them. How can I help you? What do you need? You know, what is it that you need? I have another friend whose home just recently burned, and soup got left on the stove, and the whole house, you know, really charred and ruined from the smoke. So it's like, how can friends come along? What can we do for you? What do you need? Do you need meals? Do you need help cleaning out whatever the junk? I mean, that's what people need to be doing.
How was the church helpful for you, and was it?
During my divorce per se, or
let's say divorce.
The divorce, I think, was the best thing that helped was actually starting a divorce care support group with a friend, and we did it ourselves. But just getting the curriculum, the church helped us in buying the curriculum and promoting the group, and then we had like 18 women, and it was an incredible support. So that was awesome. Staying in church, church friends, being in the choir at the time. When my father passed away, the choir gave me a lovely gift and financial gift to help pay for my kids to fly down for the funeral. I mean, those were unexpected, beautiful, beautiful responses. So that happens too, the good things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the positive benefits of change? Talking about different kinds of changes, but what's positive out of that all?
I think when I look back in my own life, if I had not gone through a lot of these changes, I don't think I would be the same person that I am. I know that I have grown immensely. I feel like I'm a stronger person. I am stronger in the Lord. It's like I can look back and go, oh yeah, he was with me through that. He was with me through that change. He was with me, you know, when my kids left home. All through those trials, he was there. And I think it builds character and it builds strength. And it's opportunities for new friends, new growth, new skills.
How do you know when it's the right time to make the change? Because, you know, a lot of people may feel that they're stuck at the same job, that they're stuck in the wrong marriage, that they're stuck, or not stuck, but maybe going the wrong way. And, it's hard to say whether I'm just complaining and not trusting God, or whether it's really God speaking in my heart.
Yes, that's a whole discussion question. Thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes.
For this question, I'll have
so when you're
one.
on the train and you're at a junction, I think that's when, so a lot of prayer, and I think seeking out wise counsel from people who are strong Christians, strong friends who know you well, who kind of have been watching your life and know who you are and know what your gifts are, and maybe you are in a dead-end job and you're not really using your potential. I know sometimes God just kicks you right out of the nest, like he did with me by the layoff. Well, then I was forced to go into private practice because I didn't have anything else. I never would have left on my own, I don't think, because it was too comfortable of a job. But to make the change yourself, I think, takes a lot of courage. And so I think seeking support and seeking godly counsel from other people and praying. And I also believe just when you're reading the scripture, asking the Lord to show you, a verse. I know in Isaiah it talks about, behold, I'm doing something new. Do you not see it? It's springing forth. I loved that passage, and that was helpful to me during some of my changes. So sometimes God will just give you a passage that will say, go, green light. And so, hearing his voice is a challenge for Christians.
And if someone is facing a change or going through difficult times, what would be the best way for them to contact you, and what kind of help can they expect from you?
Well, if they come in to see me, I like to really just hear their story and kind of go back through kind of their whole life and what have been the things that have occurred in their life, the changes that kind of made them who they are, because we're all complex beings and we're all different. And so kind of like to just find their story, hear their story, where they've been, where they're going, what are their goals, what do they want in life, what do they want from the counseling session. And then we just kind of process, and I love to listen and help people explore strategies for their own life, for their own health. I don't give advice. I don't like to do that. I want to help people find the answers for themselves with Christ's help. And sometimes we'll pray through a situation and we'll ask the Lord to give a message, and we'll listen. So it's exciting.
And what would be the best phone number to reach you?
People can reach me at 541-301-7391.
Okay. Last thoughts. Someone going through changes, perhaps listening to us or watching to us right now. What would be your advice? I know you don't give advice.
Right.
How would you help them right now?
Well, I would say there's some things that they can do, and one of the things is to find the things that keep you grounded. So when you're feeling like your life's out of control, I always ask this question: what can I control and what can I not? Okay, I can't control that I lost my job, but I can control that I get up and I exercise and I try to get enough rest and I start looking for jobs. That's what I can control. I can't control, all these other things. So just kind of focus on what can I do, and then ask the Lord to guide your steps. Lord, show me, where do I look for a job? Who do I contact? And when he tells you, do it. Listen and be obedient, and I believe that God will answer. I know that when God closes a door, there's always a window, right?
Yeah, you can always go through that.
That's right. Sometimes it's a crack, but God opens it for us as we begin to move. But we got to move. The kingdom of God does not grow without risk, and so change is part of risking. And if we want to grow as people and get on board with what God has for us, we have to be willing to change and go with him.
Well, that's a great advice. Thank you for giving advice today.
You're welcome.
You really didn't want to.
You asked for it.
Thank you. And congratulations again on your change.
Thank you.
New location, and I hope this is the last one for a while.
All right. Yes, me too.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Paulina.
All right, Cinda, Christi, and excellent counselor here in the Medford area. Well, we're kind of on a theme on that today. Coming up, what about the question of pain and suffering? We'll talk to Bob Russell about that coming up next.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. Compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, But at the Dove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, we're back, and the subject of pain and suffering is one that's really difficult for really all of us to really at times to process. And earlier I had the chance to talk to Pastor Bob Russell about this and his project with City on a Hill, Acts of God, and how do we deal with these kind of issues? Well, let's talk to Pastor Russell about it. Well, today we're delighted to talk to Pastor Bob Russell. Now, he's an interesting gentleman. He's pastored a church that ended up being one of the largest churches in America. He's authored several books, and he just got involved in now making a movie, and we're going to talk to him about that. But Bob, nice to have you, my friend. Good to see you.
Well, thank you, Perry. Good to be here.
You went from 120 to 18,000, and you lived through it.
Well, I was there at Southeast Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky for 40 years. I started when I was 22 and stayed with the church. They just couldn't get rid of me, and I stayed with it for 40 years and retired when I was a little over 62.
Well, congratulations. And the work goes on. That's what a testament. How did you get into making the movie Acts of God?
Well, there's a production studio in Louisville, Kentucky called City on a Hill, and they had contracted with Trinity Broadcast Network to do a movie. They've done several films with them, but to do a film about why bad things happen to good people or how Christians should be able to withstand tragedy. And they then approached me and asked me if I would work with them on this project. And I was intrigued by the subject. I think it's needed. And so we began to work together and used as the basis of the study, the life of Joseph in the Bible. There's a full-length movie, which is about an hour and 45 minutes long, dealing with contemporary families that have issues. And then that movie is broken down into 6 segments for small group studies. And I am the teacher in the small group study on the life of Joseph. And often we use the life of Job to talk about suffering, but Joseph went through a series of tragedies as well. Then they asked me, they said, if you're going to do the small group study for this movie, there's a role for a preacher in the movie. Would you be willing to play the role of the preacher? And I said, look, I never have acted in my life. I didn't even act in high school. I don't know that I could do that. I don't want to be hokey. And I do want to stretch. I want to be used of God. But I will try it if you be sure to be honest with me about whether it works or not. And they said, oh, we'll be honest. And they said, all we want you to do is be yourself. Just be yourself. And they had a number of very professional actors and actresses, and I was a little bit intimidated. And I found out at first that being myself wasn't good enough. They said, well, let's try that again. But, you know, eventually I got since it was the role of a preacher, and I had been in many of those situations, I actually liked it and enjoyed it.
Well, congratulations. You know, the topic itself, Bob, is a touchy one. A lot of churches don't even go there.
Well, I think there's several reasons that churches are reluctant to talk about pain and suffering. One is that there's no easy answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, you even look at the book of Job, which is a book about suffering, and we see Job suffering, and then you look, what's God's answer for why he permitted Job to suffer? And the answer seems to be, you know what, I'm not going to give you the complete answer. You just got to trust, and you've got to wait for my will to be accomplished. And we preachers like to be able to wrap everything up in 30 minutes and give easy answers. And there are no easy answers to this question. And maybe one other reason that churches are reluctant to go there is that so many people hurt. Yeah. And it's almost like you're pulling back the scab again and rather than letting the wound heal. But I really think that we need to equip our people and our leaders especially to deal with this subject of why God permits so much pain in the world, because that's probably the number one reason that people doubt. And Christian people need to be reinforced, and they need to have an answer for the hope that's in them.
You know, would you agree it seems that Christians now are just on overload with a lot of pain and suffering, just in general?
It really seems that way, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised because, the Lord predicted in the last days there would be terrible times. And it just seems like we're inundated with a lot of tragedies and a lot of pain. In addition to that, persecution of Christians and ridicule of Christians is starting to step up. And that's one of the reasons that this movie, and then accompanying the movie, I've written a book called Acts of God, which Moody is publishing, and that's to be released, I think, the 1st of April. So we're hoping that the movie and the small group studies and the book will really be helpful to people about this subject.
Wow. The tagline, you got a little bit interesting twist to it. Sometimes God gives us more than we can handle. Explain that, expound on that a little bit.
There's a tagline that says, God doesn't give us more than we can handle alone.
Alone.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about God will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear. And a lot of times Christian people will say to somebody who's hurting, well, remember that God won't let you, won't put more on you than you can bear. And that kind of gags somebody who's going through suffering. And, just like the promise of all things work together for good, he doesn't have that promise to everybody. It's to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose. And the promise that God won't give you more than you can bear is the end of that verse is he will provide a way out, that you will be able to stand up underneath it. But we've got to be relying on God. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And we see people all the time who buckle under the weight of suffering. And maybe they turn to alcohol or to drugs or to suicide or just run away and try to escape. They need the Lord. And we need to have an awesome trust in God if we're going to go through some of the hard times that come.
Were you pleased with the outcome of the film?
I got to tell you, I was really pleased. I was apprehensive when I first read the script. Because it is so realistic and it is a very heavy film. It is not a film you're going to go in. It's not a comedy, and it's not a feel-good movie. When you feel good when you come out because there is a positive ending and an inspirational ending. But everybody who sees this film says, "Boy, that's a heavy film, but boy, it is realistic." Sometimes Christians are accused of not living in the real world and trying to escape reality. And this movie is not like that. And this movie is not hokey. It demonstrates that people have real problems. And just because you believe in the Lord does not mean that those problems are over in an instant. In this movie, there are 4 different families that are interwoven with each other, and they're all dealing with different problems. And they're not over in 30 minutes. But when I saw the end result of this movie, and the last 10 minutes just is really inspirational in that it's realistic, and yet it reminds us of the hope we have in God for eternal life through Christ. And so I was very pleased when it was finished.
Now, I understand this is going to turn into, or has turned into, a group study, a DVD series for small groups.
Yes, we advise that people see the movie first in its entirety. And then there are 6 segments of small group studies on Acts of God. And the study will show a clip from the movie. And then I'm the teacher in the small group studies. And we're going to focus on the life of Joseph. You think of how Joseph, for 3 decades, went through problems with a dysfunctional family. His brothers brutalized him and threatened to kill him. And then he was a slave, and he did what was right, and he still was punished for doing the right thing and resisting the temptation of Potiphar's wife. And he gets thrown into jail, and he interprets the dream for the cupbearer, and he still is left in jail for 2 years. And he has one problem after another. But the end result was God blessed him at the end, and God used all that suffering to humble him and prepare him for being the prime minister of Egypt.
Wow. So, Bob, is there a sequel to this?
Well, we're wanting to get through this first one and see how it's responded, but we're really excited about it. People don't need, it's my observation in many years of ministry through difficult situations, that most people going through pain really don't need a theological explanation. They just need an emotional identification. people ask, why is God letting this happen to me? And there is no easy answer to that. But when they see somebody else went through it and they endured it, they've been through difficult times just like I'm going through difficult times, and they held on to their faith. And if they can do it, I can do it too. And I think that is one of the primary messages of the book, Acts of God, and of this movie, Acts of God.
All right, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you a question off topic just for a moment.
Sure.
Starting a church at 120, building it to 18,000, pastoring it for 40 years, how did you know in your heart it was time to walk away?
Well, I planned that in advance. And I had read a book called Too Great a Temptation by Joe Gregory, and it talked about how the transition at the First Baptist Church in Dallas had not gone well. And I said, that can't happen to Southeast Christian Church, because we've got to learn from that. And so I met with our elders, and we developed a 5-year transition plan. And we were blessed to have 2 guys on staff, younger guys, Dave Stone and Kyle Eidemann, who were coming up. They were ready to take over. And when I set that date 5 years in advance, and I got to July 1st, 2006, I had prayed about it and planned for it, and I was excited about actually stepping aside, knowing that I was turning the church over to some very capable hands. But you know what, Perry, when I stepped aside, I didn't quit just so I could play golf or fish or something.
Yeah, I don't find quit or retirement in the Bible.
No, I think we need to retire to something.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have another chapter in my life when my health was good and I still had the vitality to do it. And so I've spent a lot of time mentoring ministers and trying to have a ministry to church leaders. And I think this project, Acts of God, falls into that category.
So you mentored your successors.
Yes, we chose them 5 years in advance, and I let them preach more and more, and we talked about leadership, and we turned more and more things over to them. Yeah. And it was a transition that went really smoothly.
Wow, congratulations. All right, the movie's called Acts of God, and where can people begin to get a copy of this and see it?
If they would go on the website for City on a Hill in Louisville, Kentucky, that would pop up, or they could just go to bobrussell.org, and there's some reference material there about the movie as well. They could get a DVD. I was in a church in Greenwood, Mississippi last Sunday that showed the movie on Saturday night and on Sunday night again for their people, and I preached on the subject on Sunday morning, and the responses were really good. And that's one of the things that churches could do. Churches could get the DVD, show it to the entire church, and then there's a 6-week sermon series that's available. The preachers could preach. I've written 6 sermons on the life of Job that could get them started anyway.
Bob, you're a delight and an inspiration. Thank you, my friend. What an honor to have you today, and best to you. And let's stay in touch as you are used in the future in new stretching ways.
Well, thank you, Perry. It's good talking to you. God bless you.
Bob Russell, one of the great guys of America. Coming up next, our theme kind of continues on. How about hope and a future, especially for inmates? We'll be talking to some folks about that coming up in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and delighted to have in the studio with us today Rachelle Benthin. She is the president and founder of Hope and Future Ministries. In fact, you may want to jot that down, hopeandfutureministries.com, and serving as a chaplain to incarcerated women in the local Jackson County Jail, plus the Oregon State prison system. And she's brought with her today a very special guest. Kirsten Hefner's with us as well. So, Rachelle, nice to have you.
Thank you.
Your own testimony is pretty fascinating. Can you give it to us in the Reader's Digest version?
Yeah, you bet I can. Well, God brought me out of a life of alcohol, drugs, and prison. and jails.
Wow.
I founded Hope in a Future Ministries because of what I went through in my own life. For a period of about 10 years, I was out there on the streets, lower than anybody would ever want to be. God delivered me in my jail cell 14 years ago. And he gave me the promise of Jeremiah 29:11. I went to a church service there in the jail, and the lady that came in gave me Jeremiah 29:11, and he placed a dream in my heart and gave me hope for my future.
Wow.
And from there, I went to the women's mission, and I did their discipleship program. And that was a year-long program, and then she hired me on a staff, and I just recently left the women's mission to do Hope in a Future full-time. I left as the associate director.
Wow.
And so that's how Hope in a Future was founded. It became a nonprofit in 2007, and God has just been really growing it and
well, you're the
developing
fulfillment
it.
of something I say. I have been saying it for years on the air. Whatever God saves you from or brings you through, He usually turns you around, makes you a minister to.
Absolutely.
And that's what you know. So today you are ministering in Jackson County and in Oregon State Prison. And how often are you in those facilities?
Well, I go to the prison as often as I can because the prison it's in Wilsonville, and that's where all the women are housed. So I go up as often as I can. I meet with ladies for group visits or one-on-one, and I help them transition back into the community safely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, introduce Kirsten to us.
Okay, this is Kirsten.
Hi, Kirsten.
And Kirsten is currently staying at the Freedom House.
Ah.
And she's been out about 2 months, and she's just been a blessing to have. It's been an honor and a privilege to help her transition back into the community.
Tell us your story.
Well, in 2006, my marriage fell apart, and I lost my mind, and this is kind of tough to talk about, but I conspired with my cousin to have my ex-husband murdered, and only by the grace of God was he not, because he's an amazing father to my children. So I went to prison for 7.5 years for conspiracy to commit murder. And while in the Josephine County Jail, some people started talking to me about having a relationship with Jesus. And I had taken my kids to Sunday school just because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But I didn't understand the relationship. And so they really helped with that. And then when I went to prison, I went to church, but I was really angry still.
Yeah.
I didn't understand Measure 11. I didn't understand. I'd never been in trouble before. I didn't really grasp the whole enormity
so
of
us,
it.
You meet Christ in prison then?
Yes.
Okay. And then you got out just past April.
Yes, April 1st.
Now, you ministered to her, obviously, while in there, and tell her transition story.
Well, we assigned Kirsten a mentor. She found out about us through the brochures that were in the prison, and her counselor actually contacted me, the counselor within the prison. We assigned her a mentor, and then her mentor started writing her, and we started connecting with her, and I met with her within the prison. And I got to pick her up when she got released from the prison. It was just an honor and a privilege to get to do that right out of the gate. We like to get them right out of the gate. And, you know, just the simple things that we take for granted, like going to the grocery store, you know, hearing a phone ring, holding money. She hadn't held money in 7.5 years.
Wow.
And she was in the prison with her counselor, and the counselor had pulled up the Freedom House on the web, and they were viewing the Freedom House. And Kirsten said, "That house needs me." She goes, "I want to plant flowers." And so when she got out, we went and bought flowers. And I said, "Well, do you want some gloves?" And she said, "No, I want to get my hands in the dirt." She hadn't seen dirt in 7.5 years because it's all sand. And so She's just grown tremendously. She's been easy to disciple.
Wow.
She has such a heart for the Lord, and she's just growing quickly.
Kristen, what do you think God's telling you now?
Just to listen to Him. I have a tendency to try to be more driven instead of guided. And I am just really taking things slowly and listening to Him and doing what He wants me to do.
So you're at the Hope House,
Or
or the
the
Freedom
Freedom
House, excuse
House.
me, which is an incredible ministry and outreach, and you've only been there a couple months, so you're still in transition. I don't know, the whole prison jail experience, in a nutshell, it forever changed you, obviously. Right?
Oh yes. For the better, though.
Yeah.
I believe that it was so that I would have time with the Lord, that He was like, okay, sit down, girlfriend, you're going to spend some time with me. And I know now where my strength comes from, that I don't have to depend on a man or any person. And if when trials come in life, that I can just cry out to God and He's going to get me through them.
Do you feel like you're going to want to work in this ministry someday yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I start school in September at PBC, Pacific Bible College.
Really?
I'm got all enrolled, and I know that my testimony can help people.
Yeah.
And my ultimate goal is to become some kind of family counselor.
That's wonderful. All right, so Rachelle, what do people do if they want to get involved with you? Or, do you need help, and what's some of your needs there?
Well, the greatest need, of course, is prayer. We need lots of prayer and financial, just to meet the day-to-day needs within the home.
Okay, so they get a hold of you through hopeandfutureministries.com.
Yes.
And you can learn out. And I know a lot of people are called to prison and jail ministries. I know people who are doing this on a regular basis. It's life-changing.
Yeah.
It really is life-changing. But you obviously need some support in that area. And so I would encourage you to go to hopeandfutureministries.com. You can look up Rachelle there and get involved. And you're primarily dealing with incarcerated women, though, right?
Yeah, we work with incarcerated women.
Okay. And how big of a need is that?
Huge, because they won't make it. You know, as they transition out of prison, most of them don't have family. They don't have anywhere to live. We pick them up out of the bus station. And sometimes they just have a sweat outfit and a little box. You know, and then they're expected to walk to the PO's office or wherever their housing is. And so we pick them up right off the bus depot, and we take them to their housing and to their POs. And so it's very important. And plus, you know, we don't get just the ladies, we get their families too. Right. You know, Kirsten has children that God is putting back into her life, and so we work with them as well. Wow.
I only got about a minute left, but Kristen, how's that going? You reconnecting with your children, how's that going for you?
It's a slow process.
How old are they now?
My kids are 16, 15, 13, 9, and 8. And I have reconnected with my oldest daughter, and I see her pretty regularly. The other ones, it's a slower process. They're with my ex-husband, and so that's we're just praying for that door to be opened, and the Lord knows when that time is.
You're comfortable with that?
Yeah. I'm all right with it.
We'll have our timetables, and then there are his timetables.
That's absolutely right.
All right, let me, just out of time here, but hopeandafutureministry.com. Look up Rachelle and do what you can, you feel led to do, to get involved in helping them with time and effort and resources as well. Thanks for coming in, both of you. Appreciate you. Best to you, okay? God bless you both. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.